You're listening to the Beans and Dice podcast, a podcast about how we game.
That's hot coffee. Can't do that. Bad idea. Hey, folks, welcome to the Beans and Dice podcast, Thursday night live call-in show. I'm Carlos.
I'm Rob.
And I'm Wayne.
And we are the Beans and Dice podcast, a podcast about
How we get?
How we game.
Thursday nights is all about how you game because it becomes a live call-in show. And the live call-in show, the format is you take over. But in today's episode, we have special guests coming to us all the way from Red Bean Nation, our Red Beans out of Louisiana, Josh and Coco, designers of Coalition. Josh, Coco, say hi to the folks.
Hey everyone.
Hello.
Welcome.
That's
Welcome.
Coco.
Yeah, hi.
Josh has been on the show before. At minimum, he's been on as a caller. I know that he's been on as a guest host before, so second time. He's going to join us for the first hour of the show. We're going to talk a little bit about Coalition, his upcoming board game. Well, I'm going to say upcoming in the sense of being released or being put on to crowdsourcing in the next week. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk more about Coco's part of that, which I'm really excited to hear about. Coco's working on the art design, and we will then open up the phone lines. We're not going to, we'll have a quick conversation with them. We'll open up the phone lines so that you can call in and ask questions of a couple of folks who are working on publishing their own game. We love having folks
In the biz.
that are self-publishing on, because there's so much that they learn in that process that other folks who are inspired by what you're doing can learn from you. So we will open up the phone lines very, very soon. Welcome, everybody. All right, so I like to start when we have a guest, I like to start with, and also, folks, we will be going through, after we have Josh and Coco on, we will go in the top of at the 10 o'clock hour. We're going to do our top 20 updates.
Ooh.
So we have our top 20 boards. It is the first Thursday of the month. We will update you on games played in the month of May and then tell you if it impacted our boards.
Yep.
We will give you quick twigs if we have any. I do want to go to In the News today because I know that we had a topic that was provided to me last week by one of our viewers in the Discord. I had asked the folks in the Discord, hey, if you have any topics out there or articles you want us to shout out. We did get one last week.
Nice.
We didn't get to talk about it last week. We will talk about it this week, and then we'll go OGG. That's what we're doing tonight. But I like to start, when we have guests, I like to start with establishing their street cred, their gamer cred. And I do that by asking the question, are you now or have you ever been a gamer? Now, I know that, Coco, this is your first time on the show, so I'd normally be directing this to you, but we'll start with Josh. Josh, you can give a quick street cred, and then, Coco, you can come in.
Guilty.
Yeah.
Gamer.
Yeah. Gamer. Yes. Gamer as charged.
Okay.
My cred. Okay, let's see. Last night I played Sidereal Confluence. The night before I played most of a game of Nemesis before Anubis closed. Mostly board gamer. I feel like most people who play board games play a little bit of video games these days. That's myself as well. Definitely a tabletop RPG kind of guy too. That's why I don't play that many legacy games, because if I have a consistent group, it's usually for some flavor of D&D or really not actual D&D. I'm very much an indie RPG kind of guy. I'm too hipster.
Yeah. And how did you get into gaming? Did you start with the mass market stuff when you were a kid, or did it come on later?
Oh man, okay. So my grandmother, both of my grandmothers are very jointly responsible for getting me into gaming.
Okay.
Gifts in my childhood, such as the OG HeroScape Master Set, or
You hit a chord over there.
Valhalla, I think it was.
yes,
Yeah.
or Catan. I don't know. I grew up with both of those games, so
Sure.
really all down.
I'm feeling old.
Yeah.
I'm feeling. I was buying those games at the big box store for my kids.
Yeah.
I'm feeling old, Josh. I feel attacked.
So that's how I got my start.
Okay.
Coco, are you now or have you ever been a gamer?
I am, in fact, a gamer. I have always been a video gamer. I think that's like the first thing that I would classify myself as. Board games, board games came as like a surprise to me because before I got invested in Coalition, I was never actually that big of a board gamer. I was always like super social. Like I am still super socially anxious. But I've gotten better about that. So like board games as like a social activity have gotten better for me, and I've gotten a lot more used to that. I discovered that I like deck builders in particular.
Okay. I like deck builders. That's a good one.
I like Slay the Spire a lot, and we have the the board game Slay the Spire version. I've also logged in an inexcusable amount of hours on Slay the Spire on my Switch.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I've been board gaming for as long as I've known Josh, and I think I've gotten more. Like I think I've gotten warmer on it since then, and I've definitely come to like appreciate it for I don't know, just for being able to bring people together and like having a good time and not actually feeling that I don't know nervous about it anymore. I don't know. That's sort of my experience with gaming.
Warmer on crushing me at Star Realms.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. That's a good one too.
I like it when I crush you at things.
Yeah.
I like winning.
Just way better at deck builders than I am. I don't know. I just don't have the head for it, even though I love them.
I just like collecting.
I get greedy.
That's the part about deck
Collecting
builders
stuff,
that I get
yeah.
wrapped into
Gathering.
is I do the whole like I really want to build this deck up, and then I lose the game because I have a very inefficient deck.
Yep.
Right.
But I got a lot of things in it. Like you should see the things in there.
All the cool shit.
They're
things.
awesome.
Yeah.
No one will ever see the things in there. It's too big a deck.
Yeah, you might see them once.
I'll never see the things in there.
Yeah. Come out once ever.
No.
So
You'll know, and that's the important part. Is
you
that
know it's in there.
I built something awesome. Now you destroyed me, but I built something awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, welcome to the show. You guys sound lovely. It sounds like a lovely game night must be had over in Louisiana. We got a lot of great friends out of Louisiana. Our buddy Mitch, our buddy BJ,
Yeah.
Duga. Like we met a lot of great folks. I know that we were together at the SOBO Southern Board Game Fest out in Lafayette, which is where you guys are from. Beautiful city. And I've always told the stories every time we talk about SOBO. Some of the nicest people I've ever met. I'm talking all the way down to your people at the Taco Bell drive-thru.
Yep.
Were the nicest
The hotel,
people
the-
I've ever met in any city in this great nation.
Very
So
friendly. Yeah.
glad
Yeah.
to have you on.
The Sobo crew is great. I was on the Sobo crew this year. I was helping
Nice.
Jeremy out with GoPub this time around.
Okay. There
That was
you
a
go.
lot of fun.
Cool.
Now let's talk about speaking of publishing, GoPub. Let's talk about what you're publishing soon. Tell the folks at home what you've got coming up. What are you working on?
So we are working on Coalition, Councils of the Republic. It is a negotiation party game for 4 to 15 players. You are medieval politicians in a city-state, and you have overlapping goals with your opponents. I think the game's biggest selling points are the fact that there is no lying required. It is not a social deduction game. Your goals are very open. There is almost no downtime. The meat of the game is in the simultaneous negotiation phase. And then, oh gosh, what's the last thing I like to say about it?
It'll come to you.
It plays in about an hour, no matter how many people you have, because
Oh,
it's
wow.
Really?
player count by splitting you up into councils, which are their own sub games.
Okay.
Um,
Cool.
And I saw that there's a limited number of rounds.
That is no longer the case. It used
Oh,
to
okay.
be
I read a different set of rules.
a condition that ends at about that, like average 5 rounds.
But it still keeps it under about an hour.
Yes, yeah. Plus or minus like 10, 15 minutes, but
That's
So
important.
if you have a group of like 12 players, you basically have 3 councils of 4 type thing, and
yeah,
that's why.
you
Okay,
split,
nice.
you split the 3 different little like sub games, but you get to negotiate with people at any council, and then once the time is up, you have to like sit down and like do your little council phase.
Cool. Nice.
So I'm a theme guy, all about theme. Sell me on the theme of the game. Who are we? What are we doing? Where are we set in?
Yeah, okay. So you're going to be a counselor who's been summoned to draft a new constitution for our city-state. There's been an uprising. These peasant rebels have burned down a bunch of our city, and to appease them, we have decided to just throw out the old law and start from scratch.
It's
right?
1775, and we're in Philadelphia. Let's go.
But even older. This is inspired by medieval Italy, the city-states like Venice or Florence, and Coco could talk a lot about that in a minute.
Oh, God.
But
More Medici era then.
yeah, so you'll be a member of one of 4 parties. They are clergy, nobles, merchants, and rebels. They all have something in common with 2 other parties, a shared goal. Those are teams. So if you have like 8 people, you'll have like 2 people per party, and you get to have a teammate. If you have a number that's not divisible by 4, you'll throw in some independent roles, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with 2 Rooms and a Boom, but
A little bit. Yeah.
they're kind of like the Greys from 2 Rooms and a Boom. They have their own thing going on that's not exclusive with anyone else.
Kind of like the Renegade and Bang.
Yeah, a little bit. They're kind of a wild card because they can really like negotiate with or do something for anyone in the game as long as it serves their ends.
Nice.
So,
And so if you're have a teammate, you mentioned splitting up and possibly having a teammate. Is the information between the 2 completely open? Is it a complete team, or do they win together, lose together, or how does that work?
Yeah, ride or die.
Together, your party, your team wins and loses together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because Rob's not a fan of semi co-op. If he's
no.
gonna have a co-op, it needs to be full co-op.
I like co-op
all the
games.
way.
So we either all win or we all lose, but I don't like sharing my win with like one other person.
It's like a little semi co-op. Like it's not, you need your opponent's help to like accomplish your shared goal.
Sure.
But I guess not in the same sense as like I don't know, like Nemesis or Dead of Winter or something like that.
Yeah, you said Robert's favorite game,
my
Nemesis.
favorite game, Nemesis. Played it 3 times and never again.
He keeps saying that, but somehow he keeps getting wrangled
somehow
in.
keep getting pulled into another game of it. But anyway.
So is it as you're negotiating the different sides? Is it sort of like a diplomacy where you have to write down what you've agreed to and you have to stick to it, or you can sort of betray and change?
So okay. Deals are not binding, except there is a resource to make them binding that is limited. Let's zoom out on gameplay loop here. So your council has every round is adding an article to the Constitution, which is a mark on our scoreboard, and it's going to align with one of 4 virtues: order, wealth, freedom, or justice. And each party cares about 2 of those things. So that's your main scoring mechanism. It's like the nobles and the clergy have order in common. So whenever a council puts an order article into the Constitution, that benefits both of them. There's some other ways to score points. Every faction has their own little like unique bonus objective that adds spice to negotiations. They all have something special that they want to accomplish.
Again, those are completely open knowledge as well. Everybody knows.
Everyone knows. Yeah, you know what people's objectives are.
Okay.
So you can make pitches to them. You're like, hey, man, you want to be the chair of our council, and I have a card that like does that. So what are you going to give me in return? And that player might say, hey, I'll give you my sigil. So everyone gets a sigil card at the beginning of the game. They're typed. Like if I'm a merchant, I have a merchant sigil. That's not worth anything to the merchants, but it is worth a few points to the other teams. And they're used to make deals binding. So if Wayne, you were asking, like, are you beholden to what you say? No, unless there's a sigil involved. If I'm like, hey, let's pull for freedom here, I might get some new information and change my mind later and not stick to that. But, if I say, hey, let's pull for freedom here, and you're like, okay, let's trade sigils, or like, I'll give you my sigil. Now we're stuck with that. Like we have to uphold our ends of our respective deal.
Sure.
So yeah.
Cool.
Support for the throne is what I heard there.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
TI4.
The promissory notes were always my favorite part of TI.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome.
So this does sound, because I originally thought of it as a social deduction game. Like I'm thinking Blood on the Clock Tower, right? Werewolf
stuff, yeah.
or Resistance, Avalon.
No,
but
it's
I
more
feel
like
like
a
I was
diplomacy.
completely wrong. This is more negotiation,
Yeah.
politics.
Well, I think it holds a lot of appeal to social deduction fans. Something we see at conventions a lot is that you'll have your social deduction players pulling along their friends who like hate werewolf, and they'll be like, "No, trust me with this game. this one's different. You don't have to lie.
Sure.
So it's got the vibes of like big group, lots of talking, like most of the games in the talk, once as you keep adding more people, it gets more chaotic because it's like, oh man, we got like 3 councils. Like I only really know what's going on at mine. Like, so the vibes are there for people that like social deduction, but yeah, it's very, there's fewer hurt feelings, which I think is a big sell.
Yeah. I like that.
And so as you're negotiating and you're getting these two of the 4 things that your faction wants, you basically each successive time you've got that voted into the Constitution, you score victory points, and then at some point you have enough victory points to win the game. Obviously, so it's just straight kind of rush for a certain amount of victory points, or there are other winning conditions.
Yeah, so we have the scoreboard has. I wish I had a good way to show it. I don't think I have the file in a good place where I can easily find it to share my screen. They got little tracks on it, so once you like for each like thing, so it's like here's the order track, and we bubble a thing in, whatever a council does order. So once you reach a certain threshold on like 2 of the 4 tracks, the game just ends, and that's normally on round 5. It can happen sooner though if someone gets like really ahead. Let's talk. There's this mechanic called edicts. It's kind of a tug of war mechanic. It's living with the consequences of how you legislate, right? So, if we go, so every virtue has its opposite. So you've got order and freedom on an axis, and you've got wealth and justice on an axis, right? So you're going to resolve 1 edict for each axis each round, dependent on whatever's ahead on the scoreboard. And that usually benefits your faction's game plan too. So it's like, oh man, we got order ahead, so like the nobles and clergy, the guys that like order, are probably like going to get a lot of mileage out of that edict. So there's a lot of like tug of war, like, oh, we got to pump this thing up this round because we really want like this edict to come into play, or we don't want this one,
Okay, so let's talk about because we're deep into the gameplay part of it here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about winning, right? So we're in this social game. We've got our teams. We each have the things that we want to do, like edicts, and so almost like laws that we want to write into this thing that support our faction. So almost like hegemony, right? Like where you got the worker class versus the capitalist class versus the government class. Everybody's got their own goals.
Yeah.
How do I know if I'm winning? Like what tells, like, okay, we're the merchants. What are the things that we merchants want to get done?
So, okay, you can usually tell who's ahead based on how they're doing on the scoreboard. Like, are their 2 things pumped up? But usually it's really hard to know exactly who's going to win because the bulk of the points, whatever's on the scoreboard, that's public knowledge. But, the sigil cards are not, right? So if I've collected a bunch of sigils because I've been making good deals over the course of the game, like I might have stacked up a whole bunch of points for my team, and people just don't know that, right? So there is a little element of hidden information to keep it spicy. And also the party objectives, it's pretty easy to evaluate like how someone's doing in the moment, but like the edicts get bigger and swingier later in the game, so you could have some real upsets at at the very end of the game. It's like, oh man, that thing went off and that just like trashed my objective, or like, oh, I got the thing to go off and that like allowed me to fulfill my objective. So usually the final round, you can have some surprises. There's usually a surprise on the final round. It might be between 2 people. Sometimes it's anyone's game though. You really don't know until all the points are on the board. And then you tally them up.
I like it.
Okay. And I got to ask, so we're talking about a lot of negotiation, a lot of trying to sway people to do something maybe that benefits you, maybe some give and take. Is there a mechanism in the game that controls the length of how long those negotiations last? I mean, if you've got 2 people who tend to run long and maybe butt heads a lot, it sounds like it could make the game run longer.
It's on a timer.
Okay. Good.
5 minutes. You have 5 minutes to negotiate. Then you sit down at your council, and you can have discussions at your council, like during the council phase. But
sure.
like, that's kind of limited. The bulk of all your planning is like trying to figure out like what you're gonna do in the council phase, and that's all during the like 5-minute negotiation at the start of the round.
Okay, cool.
Now let's talk a little bit about the co-op aspect, right? So you got the bigger aspect of the teams against each other, but then within that you have teams, right? And my concern is there can be an A-type personality in a team who forces the decisions, forces the answers. How do you protect the more introvert, quieter gamers when they're in that one group with what's supposed to be their co-op to allow them to have decision space?
That's a great question. So there's a couple angles that I can approach this from here. The first is that listening is really important in Coalition. It's a beast of a game. Like during negotiations, people will be up on their feet. They'll be having side conversations, and it's normally pretty frantic because you're on a timer. So you really have like more introverted players who aren't like the alpha gamer types. It actually pays a lot to have a teammate like that who listens and watches like who's talking to who and like who's on what council. So if you have your like observer type who can come relay important information to teammates like, oh man, I see these guys talking. I think they're going to vote against us this round. Like we need to prepare for that, while you have your like loud type of person be out there. Like,
that's him.
Deals to the other parties, right? But observing, especially as the player count scales up, like having an observer on your team, like can help a lot. The other thing is your time and attention is kind of a resource in this game, since you only have 5 minutes to negotiate. So you really don't get these like pandemic type situations where one person's like able to quarterback their whole team because like, no man, like we need to split up. We need to be talking to people, right? Like you cover your council, I'll cover mine. We touch base, but we're not gonna peer over each other's shoulders. We don't have time for that.
Figure out which deals are the ones that you want to make.
And is it so if you have 4 people, if 12-player game, so you have or whatever 16, you have 4 players that are playing for the government faction. They're not all on one council. They're separated out amongst the other councils. So it's like one person from each faction per council. So it's like, is that kind of how it is? It's not like all the 4 government people are one council, right? They're separate.
It's usually a good mix. You can have teammates on your councils. In fact, you send someone away and receive one every round. So like they change a little bit.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's not a static. The council will rotate as you move around. Okay, cool.
Yeah, you're not stuck with the same players, though you can be like depending on your game plan. There's like a bit of a like seniority type mechanic where like you kind of like every council has a chair. Like we have these dry erase placards. I'm gonna get one out. You write your name on them and you form this little list, and that tells you who's on your council. And whoever's at the top of the list is your chair. So they get some like special powers over the course of the game, especially depending on what edicts come into play. But if you move, you go to the bottom of the list at the next council. So like staying somewhere longer puts you closer to being the chair. So like depending on your faction and your own play style, you might hop councils a lot and talk to a lot of different people, or you might like turtle up and stay on the same table for the whole game. It kind of
it's very political.
It's interesting, yeah.
Like I'm digging it's very governmental. Like this is why nothing gets done in Washington because
gridlock.
Yes. At this point, I am going to open up the phone lines. It is 9:30 Eastern time. I don't want to keep the folks at home waiting. Phone lines are open.
If they have questions, call in now. This is the time. We've got them for about another 30 minutes. So if you have questions about the game, you have questions about game design, you have questions about researching history, which I think we'll get into a little bit here with Coco in just a moment, but how that is tied into a game and the theme and art and all that kind of stuff. Call now. This is the time to, you got a couple people here in the business working on a game, and this is the time to ask questions. So
that was actually I was going to pivot towards asking that. I was going to say, like, you mentioned that it's kind of the city state era, excuse me,
Era.
yeah, my New York showing through there. In medieval Italy, is it based on actual functions of the government then, and the city states and the way they worked? How much did you take from that and bring it into the game?
I mean,
Do you want me to talk about mechanisms and then?
so we actually had a class together at Tulane about medieval Italy, and that's I think where he got the idea. But essentially, during this time, these city states were like, I don't know, they were very like unique experiments, very very like specific to Italy. Mostly because it does like the way that power sharing worked was very different, and it felt like power was less centralized. I think for better or for worse in these cities. I still can't get over the towers.
The towers.
The towers.
Yeah, what about the towers?
The towers. Okay, so nobles would build these towers. And every noble, every rich person thought, okay, so the way to display my wealth is to build the biggest tower. And at some point, this problem got so ridiculous because every noble was just building the tallest tower. And of course, you couldn't have, your neighbor be taller than you. So they would just keep building higher and higher and higher. And at some point, and I forget when, but there was like a mandate that said, okay, all the towers are going to be like this high, no more. And they cut down all the towers to that size. I forgot why we got on this tangent. It's just like
we're learning about the history of it, right? And I'd like to establish some of that cred in here on your background, your education is in.
Yeah, so I got my bachelor's in medieval history, and that is because I like to be an independent thinker, which means that I didn't want to get an English degree.
Okay.
I was really driven toward medieval history, like a little bit into my my college career, and I was like, you know what, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I like studying people in this particular time period, so I'm gonna go for that.
I love it. Like that to me sounds awesome.
Thanks, thank you. It was really really nice. I actually, you know what, I don't regret it at all. I think any degree that I think of the things that I could have done with that degree, it was, yeah, I mean, it's not like it would have gotten me a job, but it is something that gives me a lot of perspective. Because I don't know, the medieval period is something that people feel like they know, or like it's something that's so popular.
But what I'm finding out is it's so big.
Yeah.
It runs so many years. I've never friend of the show, Richard Borg, designed Command and Colors, but he came out with his medieval series, and he got so much flack when he started it because it was so early in the medieval period that people were like, this isn't medieval. What is this? This is ancient history. He's like, no, like medieval history runs from just the War of the Roses wasn't it, y'all. Mm-hmm. Like that wasn't all of medieval history. Mm-hmm. So that really blew my mind because it got me interested in learning. So I now have been listening in Audible about the Crusades. Like I'm a whole book, long one, on the Crusades because I wanted to better understand this. It's a very interesting topic, and I'm glad that there's someone on your side, Josh, to help you with understanding how you can tie in. I love when a game can tie in actual history, like theme, into mechanics. Rob doesn't care.
Yeah.
Theme into mechanics.
Of course. Well, and I think the other big good thing is like each country or each region in the medieval times had such differences that like it's hard to capture it. So I like that you're focusing on sort of like Italy and medieval Italy because totally different than what was going on in France or in Prussia or Germany at the time. So it's kind of cool. Yeah, I like that idea.
It's not, and bring it back around to what you originally asked Wayne. We're not like trying to be one-to-one. It's inspired by like Florence and Venice, but really, we took that class together, and I had this game idea in my head, and I was like, okay, I need like 4 factions that maybe have common interests, and like oh man, I don't want to do modern politics. Oh my god. Oh, medieval Italy. We have the three estates, which were. Do you want to talk about that? You want?
We have the what?
Oh yeah.
Can you say that again?
The three estates.
The three estates. I
That was kind of the inspo for the faction. I don't know. I don't even know how Italian that was.
I
But
forget what the three estates were.
it's the idea of like the three like pillars of society.
Oh yeah.
Like you have like the men of the cloth. You have the nobles, the men who fight, and then you have
the peasants.
the peasant. Yeah, who like feed everyone.
Right. Who do all the other things.
And then in like wealthy merchant republics in Italy, you have like, there wasn't a clear line between like merchant or noble, but like there was a path to wealth and social mobility that was kind of a new like caste, essentially.
Yes.
You wanna say something about that?
Okay, so this is so it's fun. I heard the word capitalism earlier.
Hegemony.
Funny that I don't know, I forget exactly what the context was, but for the merchants in this game, what we ended up doing was we kind of tried to model history, because at first it was like we tried to set it in like 1300, and we have set it in 1300. I mean, there's no clear date that we put on it, but like it's this really interesting time period between like maybe 1300 to like 1450, 1500, where the world is starting to shift in some major ways, and that has a lot to do with like outside factors like the Black Death, which I did my thesis on the Black Death and art after the Black Death. Mercantilism was the first like appearance of what is known as capitalism, and it is the idea that you could rise. I mean, like it's not literally this, but it ended up being this. The idea that you could rise in your station purely by selling things, which for a long period, for the majority of the medieval period and before that, I mean, I'm not an ancient historian, but I think it was the same as well. I mean, it was functionally a caste system. If you were born in one class, that was it. Like you probably weren't going to rise above that. You could be like, if you were of a lower station, like you could be, a man of the cloth, but that wasn't going to like bring you wealth. You were either born into wealth or you weren't. And then this wave of mercantilism, and I forget exactly how it started, but like trade, especially in the Mediterranean, started to crop up and changed all of that. And depending on the person that you were, that was either a really good thing for you or a really bad thing, because the nobles in this game function as like old money, and the merchants are very new money, and that's what they were back then as well. So it's like you have like this new burgeoning wave of like wealth suddenly out of nowhere, and they have their own demands and prices and things that they want to inflict upon the government, whereas you have that old landed gentry that's like based off of very, 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 very old lineages and fealties and
Status quo, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, the nobles were the government, but also like they weren't. There were other things that were sort of folding into there at the time. So I don't know. This is like a really cool period of change that I like.
Do you want to? Can we? I'm sorry. If y'all could get some questions in, if you'd like. I was going to ask if you wanted to like talk about a particular piece of art kind of related.
Yeah, because not only were you part like the historical part, right? So you're in there having that deeper conversation, but my understanding is you're also working on the illustration.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right, Coco?
Yes. Yeah. I'm the illustrator. I did I did the box art.
Why do you have him around? Like, what does he do?
Box art. Look at that. I did the box art.
He's
and
just here to be a pretty face. That's all Josh is good for.
Thanks.
So you did the box art?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how did that skill develop? Where did that come from?
How did my skill in art develop? Good
So
question.
we have a friend of the show out of the great state of Oregon.
Uh-huh.
He learned all Chris Scafidi. He learned all. He took classes. Like he just started going to, like, community college
On his own, yeah.
and taking classes on how to draw so that he can illustrate his own games. He's a designer by trade. I think in the IT world or computer world. I don't know. I don't know computers.
Yeah.
But then he decided he wanted to design games, and then he figured, you know what, I'm gonna learn how to draw. So he taught himself how to draw. Where'd you get into doing art and illustration?
God, I mean, I've been drawing for. I think I've been drawing literally my entire life. I don't think that there has been a moment where I wasn't drawing. And I got into digital art when I was a kid, actually. So I had a lot of experience with it leading up into this.
Also, it helps that your mom's an artist, professionally.
This
too.
helps also.
Sure.
So I won't discount that.
So her mom's an artist. She's an artist. She knows it. What are you here for, Josh?
Sometimes I wonder, man.
So where did you draw the inspiration for the art, the box art?
Personally, I this was like really based off of I don't know, like not necessarily like Renaissance pieces, but like that controlled chaos composition. I really love comics, actually, and a lot of the way that I pose characters and that I try to, like, I don't know, the way that I tried to formulate scenes is very comic booky in, like, technique, where I'm trying to make everything as clear as possible, make the characters as bombastic as possible. You know, I put one foot in reality because Josh typically asks me to do that. But I would go bigger. I would go bigger typically. But I have a love for, like, I don't know, just charisma and character. You know, showing something that's unique about this person or that person. So the thing that I really wanted to do for the box art, and the thing that I really drew inspiration from, was actually, this is going to sound corny, but I drew inspiration from Coalition itself, from, like, seeing people play it and trying to capture that same vibe, which was controlled chaos, and a lot of people be like talking, you know, like trying to make deals and also being like, hey, what you made that deal behind my back, I don't understand. And then, oh, that, like, you know, that deal might be good for me, or I'm trying, like, you know, the Inquisitor, I don't know if you can see her in this.
That lady above you.
Ta-da.
Okay.
That's what I liked about the composition of the box art, was
Right.
it felt like, to me, that's what I would see at a con. If I'm sitting at a table at a game of this type, you would see folks at the table near the board. You'd see folks kind of stepping away to have these conversations, right? These suspicious looks that are, so I feel like you put us in the game.
Yep.
But it's, you know, 1300 Italy, like we're sitting at the table as if we are a character in the game.
Yeah, that
And
was
then you got the jester down there. I'm not sure what to call him.
the Jester.
Yeah, that's him.
The
The
Jester.
jester, and he's kind of giving you that shh, kind of. If y'all pull up the art, you can find the art, and you can actually find Coalition on Board Game Geek.
Oh, yeah.
So for you folks at home, if and especially for my folks that listen to the podcast version, so it's just audio, you don't get the visuals that we have. You can go to Board Game Geek, and you can actually see Coalition on there. I know you can hit the fan button, so you can follow along by hitting the heart, making sure you fan it, but you can actually see the box art right there on Board Game Geek, and also on their website, Spoonbill Games is their website, spoonbillgames.com, all one word, spoonbillgames.com. You can get more information and sign up for their newsletter, and also download the rulebook and see more of that art we're talking about. So for you folks listening at home. But again, compliments on the composition of the box art. It really feels like they're playing the game.
Yeah, that was on purpose. Actually, it ended up being that we were boothing at BGG Spring.
Yeah.
And we ordered this big tapestry, and we put it behind, much like you're seeing right now. We put it behind us, and what ended up accidentally happening, and we didn't plan for this, but, like, the way the booth was set up, you had the table in front of the tapestry, it almost felt like the table was an extension
Ah.
of what's happening in the game, which is
Yeah, like
Cool.
our demoers were sitting there playing the game, like in front of this printed on an 8-foot banner. Like
yeah.
Nice.
Oh yeah, we totally
was-
did that on purpose.
it was
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, you could make a whole thing out of it. Role play your faction. You know, you could have a night of people familiar with the game come over dressed up as whatever faction you're part of. That would be cool.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Talk to the uninitiated a little bit here. So I'm what you said digital art. Like, what does that mean?
Digital art is when you're making art using a computer like software, like Photoshop. I use Krita, and I also use a tablet that like has like it's like a second touchscreen tablet, where you have like a second monitor almost. So it feels like you're drawing with a pen and pencil, but you're not. And it's a lot easier to do art like. It's a lot easier to do art for board games when you don't have to worry about like scanning and like actually, having a physical paper in front of you. So I prefer digital art. I know that other people prefer to use like a mix of them, so that maybe they'll like, draw something on a piece of paper and then scan it and then put it up into a digital program and then edit it from there. But like I prefer to do things all digitally. And that's where most of my skill is, but I also do traditional art.
Okay, so I have some like pens that I have like because I tried to learn how to draw digitally. So there's these I can't even remember the technology. Waypen? Does that sound?
Wacom?
Wacom. That's
there
the
you
word
go.
I'm looking
Yeah,
for.
that's it.
I
Yeah.
bought one of those tablets to try to learn how to like draw my own tokens and stuff, and it's hard to reference like this black piece of tablet, right? Drawing on it when the screen is vertical in front of you, so like you can't see what you're drawing on.
So that's how I started actually, and that's how a lot of people typically start. And it is a bit of a learning curve, and it's really weird, but like I don't know, after a certain point you just get used to it. And then when I tried to switch back into do it, because like the way that I do it is like it's like I'm almost drawing on an iPad now, except it's hooked up to my laptop. So I can see what I'm doing, and it makes it easier for me. But when I switched back to that, I was like, wait, it's not up on the screen anymore. What am I doing? So I don't know. The reverse was hard for me as well.
Interesting.
Well, great work. I love the illustrations. I love the comic book style. You kind of described it as that. It's very bright.
Thank you.
Now, Josh, what's the remind the folks at home? Hey, folks, phone lines are open. 813-618-7099 is the number. If you got questions for Josh and Coco about the game Coalition, it's your time to call in. Ask them anything you want about game design, game production. Doing a Kickstarter, right? We're going on Kickstarter with this one.
Yes.
So how does that work? And that's kind of where I'm going to lead the conversation to now is that publishing piece, right? There's that design piece, there's that illustration piece, kind of the gameplay, figuring all that stuff out. And then you have all that together. Now it's time to figure out, well, how do I turn this into a real life product? Where do you start? Someone's got an idea, someone's got some images, some inspiration. Where do you even start with turning that into pulp, into paper?
All right. Two big things that have brought me to this point. One, giving myself deadlines by signing up for playtest events at conventions. If you've got a game out there like that you've been sitting on, that you've played at least a couple times with your friends at home, I would not be afraid to show up to some kind of unpub event with it. That's what kept this project going. Is I'd be like, oh crap, I signed up for that convention in like a month. I need to make sure this is in a presentable
Playable state, yeah.
place. Yeah. The other thing is there is a wealth of information from all those who have gone before, not just on how to do board game Kickstarters, but just game design in general. Off the top of my head, the Crowdfunding Nerds podcast is really good. Board Game Design Lab, really good. This game probably wouldn't exist without BGDL, actually. Let's see. Brandon, the game dev, I think is that the guy that did Radlands, or is that a different blog I'm thinking about? That's a good blog. The guy who did Isle of Cats has a really good blog. Jamie Stegmeyer has a really good blog.
Always.
All out there. So how to start? One, like keep playtesting and iterating. Two, just like do your homework. Just like read, put on these podcasts as background noise. You know, that's how you get started. Once you're really serious about it, there's lots of ways to get in touch with people. You know, people want to pay it forward. People in the industry want to share their expertise. And you can't just show up with like some idea and be like, hey guys, I have like the best worker placement game ever. I haven't even made a prototype yet. But once you've showed some commitment to your project, people are more than happy to. I'm really lucky to have a contact through the Unpub tabletop mentorship program. In fact, especially in the last like 2 or 3 months, like I did this last year, but John Cadiz, super nice guy. I love having him in my Discord DMs and he'd be like, hey John, here's my game plan for this. Does this sound crazy or does this sound normal? And he'll like tell me one way or another. Like keep me on the right track.
So it's time for me to make the game. Like, do I just go to Kinko's? Like, can I call them up to figure out, hey, I need 100 copies of this game? How does that? Where do you go there?
God, I wish.
So we, okay. We figured out what we wanted in the box. Components list. Start there. Make a prototype. We got our prototypes from Print and Play Games. Super nice. Your prototype run is going to be pretty expensive per copy, though, because that's the nature of doing like a batch of a dozen games. And then once you're ready to talk about production, just hit up manufacturers, like check who made some of the prettiest games on your shelf. Go find their website and like fill out their quote form.
How do you figure that out? Like, so like if I got a shelf of games here.
I think they're normally credited in the rule book. If not,
okay.
Do they put their logos on the back of the boxes? I don't know, but you can definitely find it on.
Yeah, you can Panda logo on a lot of the games. You can see
Yeah.
Panda on the back, and
Yeah.
they're the biggest one.
Yeah, and you can always find publishers on Board Game Geek too, in the entries.
There's actually, so I don't know if this is something that would be useful to people, but this is for people that are into like the aesthetics and design. Panda actually put out a free PDF that talks about like CMYK printing, how to make things look good when you're printing physically, because that's the thing that like, this is my first game. This is our first game. Duh. We'd never printed anything like that before, but something that you don't realize when you're going from like a digital piece to like physical is that the art is going to look different when it's on a box. because like a printer has to mix physical ink as opposed to just like, because I don't know, a computer screen can simulate as many colors as the human eye can possibly imagine, but like if printer has to physically print all of that. So a Panda has a PDF somewhere that talks about how to make that work for you and what, like how you can make black look good, which is harder than it looks, weirdly enough. Anyway, yeah, that's just that's something that like I kind of stumbled upon, and I feel like maybe other people don't know about it.
How much work does it take to fix it? Right. So, and I've worked in printing before. In the U.S., there's a local company that did business cards and postcards, and I worked for them for about a year. So I got to watch the printing guys and work with them in the back with the print machines, mixing inks to create colors. We would struggle with customers and getting them because they have an idea in their mind. Their computer at home tells them it looks like this. We're like, bro, that's not the red you're looking for. Like your monitor that you bought from, Dell.com isn't going to cut it. Mm-hmm. How much work is it going to take for you to redo your art to make it work?
So for me, like, thankfully, I don't have to redo any of the art for Coalition. I did not start out with that knowledge, but I ended up actually being quite lucky because Coalition uses very warm colors. As far as I'm not super like adept yet at doing this. But like as far as I'm aware, CMYK printing, like it doesn't do well with like neon unnatural colors, I think. So like any like really bright lime greens or like bright purples, like violent purples, is not gonna. That's just not gonna work. So like, there's usually it depends on what you're doing. For me, there like in Creta, there's like a way that you can turn on like a proof, so you can sort of toggle view and go back and forth from like, okay, well here's my design as it looks on my computer in RGB, which is, you know, the standard, like every single color that could ever possibly exist simulated on a screen. That's what you're seeing in RGB. And usually there's a way to toggle between that and CMYK. So there's a way for you to see, and it depends on what kind of program you're using, but like it depends. But like you can usually see like, okay, this is what it's
going to be a problem area here.
Right. And you can see how it's going to look on a computer screen, because I mean, if that matters to you, like if you're going to be using that on like a Kickstarter page, then that might matter to you. You may even want to have two versions of the same image, which is not a thing that we've had to do yet. But like,
Well, don't we?
oh, you know what? Yeah, we do.
Yeah, you make like brighten up your files, and those are
right. Because printing, that's another thing. That's the thing that we ran into, that we discovered accidentally, is that when you print, it's usually darker than what it looks like on your screen, because your screen is
backlit.
It's light.
Yeah.
You're seeing, yeah, it's light. You're seeing light. And then when you actually print something, physically this is an object, and now like it's just going to look darker no matter what you do, so you have to brighten up your art generally. We discovered that the hard way when we got our first prototype cards.
They're pretty dark.
Really
And
dark.
not even just color. Do you have issues? Is it also like sizing too? Like you see something on a screen in certain resolution,
Yeah.
and then when you print it, the details don't come through, or the details look different. Is that also an issue?
So for a lot of the character art, I feel like I put in a lot of detail. I put in so much detail, and some of it doesn't show up because I am not aware of like I am more aware of it than I was before. But when I was first starting out, it's like I had no idea how big they were going to be. So you kind of don't. Sometimes you need to. This is a thing that I've started doing now, because I'm actually like branching out, and I'm doing art for other board games as well.
Cool. Oh, nice.
Yes. I have started actually cutting out like a physical piece of paper, like the size of whatever it is that I'm, supposed to be illustrating. And I will hold it up to my computer screen, and then I will size up or size down the image just to make sure that I think what like it's gonna look this, because like I mean if something can look really, really good close up and then you zoom out and you're like, that doesn't make any sense visually.
Right.
Yeah.
So I feel like the biggest challenge for a person getting into like illustrating board games, or like physically like getting into the aesthetics side at least, is like you have to keep reminding yourself that this is an object that people can hold with their hands, as opposed to just an image on your screen, which sounds like a thing that you would just know, but you don't. Yeah, I think that about wraps it up for what I had to say.
Makes sense. The perspective of the object. I mean, it's you look at a billboard, right? And if you ever got up close to a billboard, you would see like how big these blobs of colors are. Right? But from a distance, it looks like a high-res image. So it's that perspective of I don't really need to put in that much detail onto something that's going onto a card, because the printer's not going to be able to print at that resolution and make that detail stand out. And it's really going to cause issues. It's going to make it ugly. It's going to add more darkness to certain areas because you added what you thought was texture, but yes.
So we made the decision very early on to make all the character cards tarot size, because Coco's strength is character design. So we really wanted to make sure we had the space to show off all of her wonderful.
I think it also kind of fits the theme. Like that size of a card is not a normal size card, but it's like Seven Wonders, right? A Seven Wonders size card kind of fits that ancient or historical theme.
Yeah,
I like it.
I know we've only got you for about an hour. We're coming up on the hour now. So before we can still talk a little bit, but before we miss it, certainly tell people how they can find Coalition. How can they go if they're interested in learning about more about it? How can they go and pre-order or the words escaped my head here.
Pledge.
Pledge. There you go. Pledge for it. Yeah.
English is not his first
my
language
language.
either.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
All right, so you can learn about Coalition at coalitionthegame.com. You can join our mailing list there, and you can find out everything you want to know going into our Kickstarter. We have our preview page on Kickstarter. How do I join this chat thing here? Oh man, I gotta
Don't forget our Discord. So Josh, make sure you're in our Discord. We have a channel called I forgot the name of the channel.
You're gonna look at me. So
shameless plugs.
There you go.
Shameless
at the same
plugs.
time. Shameless plugs.
And Wayne's throwing it in the chat for me.
Oh, did he? Oh, there
I
you
can
go.
always count on Wayne. Shameless plugs. That's where you can throw in links in there. So folks that are listening to the podcast later, jump on our Discord. The link is in the bio of every episode for you to join. Check out Shameless Plugs, and you can see links that Josh is going to post there. When does the Kickstarter go live?
June 10th, Tuesday.
Oh, coming up soon. Yeah, real soon.
What's the goal set at?
Just 10K. That is what it would take to get a minimum print run of 1,000 copies printed. That is definitely not a break-even point, but that's okay.
Sure. That's the starting level.
There, and once we have the copies, we can keep selling them. So
sure, yeah.
Well, part of it is also the dream, right? Like I do this podcast here. We make no money.
No, we just do it for
Zero.
fun. Yeah, this is all.
It costs me money every month for the hosting and the website and the streaming services and all that. But I do it because I love the creation aspect. It's I'm not doing this to become rich or anything. This is because I want to see something put out into the world, that we created. So I can see why, even knowing that you may not break even, this is a passion project.
Yeah.
Seeing it put out into the world, you made a baby and put it in the world.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, dude, there's a box with our names on it, and you can go buy it. Like, that's awesome.
It's the thing we made.
Pretty cool.
The thing we've created, and now it's there, and you can look at it.
As far as conventions and things where people may be able to come and sit down and actually look at the game and maybe play it, is there anything on the horizon for that?
Oh, absolutely. So I will be at Origins in a couple of weeks.
Nice.
Booth.
Very cool.
55 in the exhibitor hall. We also have we'll have demos there, but we'll also have our big game every evening. I'm sure those will be packed. So if you want 20-player craziness, that's what.
That's going to experience it in its full glory. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
we have a lot of games at Gen Con too. No booth, but I'm going to be running events at Gen Con like 12 hours a day. So
cool.
Nice.
Well, I know we got listeners in both of those areas, so I'm sure we'll have people at those conventions, and hopefully they'll seek you out and play.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Wayne.
I was going to say, I think every gamer has an idea for a game in their head, and so like just congratulations for taking that idea and making it a physical thing, right? Because so few of people do, right? So it's pretty cool. So congratulations on that. I hope the campaign is a super success, and we should you should join the Board Game Rundown Discord as well. And I know they're at Origins. They have a booth there, and you should try to get those guys to get you on.
Those guys are great.
They're actually going to have a review for us up.
Oh, perfect.
Nice.
There we go. Great. Awesome. Love it.
Yep.
Good.
Love those
You're ahead
guys.
of us. I like it.
We've collaborated with them a few times.
Yeah.
I think
Sometimes,
we're so similar with that crew. You know,
Well, and they do a really good job of bringing on content creators or game designers to push their games and kind of go. So we want to.
And they have a much
That's my
bigger
brother.
audience than we do. You know?
Oh yeah, man.
It's like 3 people, and then 2 of them are my mom and Wayne's mom.
Yeah, sure. Anyway,
Awesome.
Well, it's been a pleasure to have you again. Sad that we did not get calls. I know that this last few weeks, calls have been a little bit slow. I think we only topped out at 3 last week. I was hoping to get some more calls in for y'all, but we had a great conversation.
Yeah.
Love to have you guys back once, if and when the project fulfills, right? And once you start down that path, having you back on for those updates of like, okay, here's what we really learned, right?
here's what really happened. Yeah.
The folks
Yeah.
at home love to hear about that.
It's more than
I've been like triple checking all the numbers the last couple of weeks. Like dude, literally the other day, like I found something and I was thank God we didn't launch with this number because this needs to change. Anyway, I'm
Yeah.
sure there'll be a lot more of that.
Yep. It'll all be okay. Yeah.
What about the stretch goals?
Worse.
Anyway, thanks for having us.
That's a lot of stress, brother. That's a lot of stress.
It's fun. It's exciting, but like I'm like
Good stress.
I feel like I've been drinking a lot of coffee, except I'm
Yeah.
drinking a normal amount of coffee. Anyway,
A little wired. Yeah.
But I love hearing that you've kept it down to about an hour of gameplay
Yeah.
because
That's important.
that is huge, right? I know Robert is not a huge play on the social aspects
Yeah.
of the games, but if they go more than an hour, my attention span kind of starts to wane.
Sure.
So like I feel like that hour mark makes me even want to be like, okay, that I can definitely do an hour.
yeah,
Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
I design is gonna be really low downtime. Like I hate waiting for my turn. Like
Good.
that's-
Good.
yeah,
Awesome.
Mr. Jeeves agrees in the chat. He says gameplay length is key.
It kind of
think
is.
so.
I mean, I was hardcore into playing like Werewolf and stuff when it first started, and that's when people were the games 30, 45 minutes. Then everyone started getting too crazy with the conversations and the back and forth, and the games would go an hour or 2 hours. And you're like, that's come on, guys. Can we just move this along a little
Rein it
bit?
in.
Like,
yeah.
yeah. So keeping it to that hour for those kind of games is where I think you keep people in, and you don't drive any of those games are going to have the cult following, right? The people who love the Blood on the Clock Tower, and then you have the gamers that would play it, but I'm not going to sit there for 2 hours. Like I'll play for an hour. So that's big. So.
yeah. Well, thanks.
James Odak disagrees. He says,
Well, the
Wait, not
fun
3
thing
hours.
is,
What's the point? Yeah.
you don't have to stick to the 5-minute negotiations. If you want to like talk each other's ears off for like 10 or 15 minutes every round, you
Hey,
can
you
totally
can do
just
that.
do
House
that.
rules. House rules. Yeah.
Like,
Or you
there's
can
nothing
make-
stopping
Or
you.
you can make the negotiations 2 minutes.
Yeah. Everyone, shut up. 2 minutes. Like you can do
Go.
that. Yeah, we're not your parents. Do what you want.
There you go.
Coalition Blitz. All right, folks. This has been Carlos,
And
Rob, and Wayne hanging out with Josh and Coco, designers of Coalition. You can find out more at spoonbillgames.com, coalitionthegame.com. Did I
Yes.
get that right? Coalitionthegame.com, and their Kickstarter launches on 10 June.